Welcome to Eikon Church, everyone. I want to take a moment before we jump into today's message and just take a second just to thank you all. If you weren't here last week, you may not know this, but for those of you that were, last Sunday was Pastor Appreciation Sunday, and so many of you expressed your appreciation to Kelly and I, and we are just so grateful. We were just showered with cards and thank yous, and it was just amazing. In fact, after service, we went upstairs and we took all the cards that so many of you wrote to us and just sat there and read those cards. And time after time, we were reminded this is why we do this. And it just breathed so much life into us. So on behalf of Kelly and myself, I just want to say thank you so much. It was awesome. Probably my favorite part was going through the kids' cards. Over in kids' church, they had them write cards. They're kind of blank cards that started with, "I'm glad you're my pastor because..." And then we opened them up, and I kid you not, every single child thanked us for the donuts. So if we don't do anything around here, we have donuts. So I know I will never let go of those donuts just because I need to keep the kids happy. So if anyone's happy, we'll keep the kids happy. Actually, many of the kids, and I don't know which of you parents is you, many of the kids thanked us for the coffee and donuts. So I don't know which of your children enjoys coffee, but good luck to you. If my children drank coffee regularly, it would be a scary place. So God bless you if your child likes coffee. But it was awesome. So I just wanted to take a moment and just say thank you so much. It was a great day last week. Last week, we actually ended with a question, kind of setting up this week in our current series called Eikon Loves. And we ended with this question. We asked ourselves, what does this kind of love look like? Now, if you missed last week, you're probably thinking, well, what kind of love? We talked a little bit about that. We talked about Jesus and the way that Jesus showed love. If you're new around here and you don't know a whole lot about Jesus, man, you're missing out because we are all about Jesus here at Eikon. His love was this extravagant, over-the-top, unexpected kind of love. Jesus was the type of guy, one time at a wedding feast, this beautiful wedding, and they ran out of wine. And Jesus was like, well, we can't have that. So Jesus took some water and turned it into even more wine after that. You might be thinking, they sing songs about wine. They tell stories about Jesus and wine. What is with this church and wine? I'll just leave that to you to figure out. But Jesus, it's almost as if to him, being with people, being present in the moment, celebrating together, it's almost like that was important to him. And then there was these times that Jesus went to the margins and showed this unexpected kind of love that people looked at him sideways because there were moments that he hung out with really immoral people. And even more than that, many times, in fact, more often than not, Jesus never told them to change. He never told them, you better clean up, you better obey, you better do this or do that, which was awkward. Religious leaders were like, Jesus, what are you doing? Jesus had a reputation for being friends with those kinds of people. It's crazy. The religious, self-righteous, judgmental religious leaders looked down on Jesus for this. But it was wild. Jesus also spent time with those people. He went and ate with the judgmental religious folks as well. It's like you couldn't nail Jesus down. Jesus, who are you for? Which side are you for? And Jesus just kept saying, yes, absolutely. But then there were times, Jesus was no pushover. When Jesus saw injustice being done to people, there were moments that he lost it. He flipped over tables. He called people out. It was hard to figure out. Jesus kept going to the margins. Jesus, he would tell stories about children that were so rebellious, did the most kind of heinous things you could do in that kind of culture, and then likened God to the father that had been disrespected, that when the son returned, acted like he didn't even care about what the son had done and just embraced the son as if to say that that's what God is like. God is like a father that doesn't care the worst things you've done, but embraces you in the midst of it anyway. Jesus was the kind of leader that gave position, power, and authority to people in his culture that were deemed as insignificant. Jesus kept raising up women. In fact, in his movement after he died, women had a prominent role. Women were the first people to discover that Jesus had risen from the dead. And Jesus kept elevating people that had no position and authority in their culture in their day. Jesus kept shocking the people around him with his love. Jesus seemingly disobeyed his religion so that he could show love to those that religion deemed weren't worthy of it. His love was too much for his religion. And eventually the religious leaders had enough and they said, Jesus, this must end. So what we're talking about today with this series, Eikon Loves, is what does that kind of love look like, right? The kind of love that Jesus displayed, what does that look like? Because the thing is, we don't have kind of ceremonially unclean people in our day and age today. We don't have the same culture or the same practices today that Jesus did then. There's no temple that we go to that we got to be clean for. There's the tax collectors of today, the IRS, though not always liked, aren't the same as it was back then. So here in 2018, in Hayes County, what does that kind of love look like? See, that's why we're doing this series, and we're kicking off this series called Eikon Loves. This is a series that I've wanted to do for over 5 years. I've prayed about this series. I've thought about this series. We've planned about this. As a staff, this has been something we've wanted to do for years, and it's finally here. We want to talk about what that kind of love, what that Jesus kind of love looks like today in our communities, in our culture, in our world here for Eikon Church. You see, we want to be known for this. We want to be known as a church for our love. And underpinning this whole series, this whole idea, is there's this one verse that we want this to be kind of the verse that we keep coming back to. This is the clarion call, the bass drum underneath each of these weeks will be this one verse. And it was penned by a guy by the name of John. John was one of Jesus' closest followers and friends. John, likely the youngest of Jesus' followers, the only person not to desert Jesus when he was being crucified and killed for his love. John, the one that had lived the longest as all the disciples paid with their lives for this kind of love. John had seen everything and at the end of his life wrote this letter summing up so beautifully this Jesus message. And in his letter, John writes this. He says, "Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth." And I say to you today, Eikon Church, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. This is who we are. We've got to understand that it's not just enough to say that we love people. We've got to prove it. See, love, we must love in action because at the end of the day, love is action. That's what love is. In fact, what motivated John to say this, in fact, the verse right before that verse that we read, that's kind of our staple verse that we're going to keep coming back to, Jesus articulated this idea that love is acting on something. When he wrote this, John said, "If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person?" John's saying, listen, I get it. You say you love God. You say you're a part of the church. But if you see someone in need and you have the means to do something about it and you don't, where is the love of God? He's going, because I've seen Jesus and he didn't just say stuff. He did stuff. He did things. And we've got to understand it's this choice of our will. There will be moments. There are lots of moments that we don't feel like it. That our emotions, we don't want to show love because we're tired, we're exhausted, we don't like that person. I mean, line up the list. There's lots of reasons why many times we don't want to show love. But loving like Jesus is actually an action we choose, not an emotion we use. So if you're waiting for this emotion, if you're waiting to really feel like it, you're missing it. And I get it, because here's the deal. As a communicator, it's not real hard to communicate emotion. I hope when you sit here, I hope at the end of the today, you're going, yes, let's do this. And the emotion is there. I've accomplished my job. But you can't love people in your seat. You can be motivated in your seat. You can be challenged in your seat. You can be convicted, inspired, all of those things. Yes, that can happen sitting in this room. You cannot show this world what Jesus is like through your love by sitting in these seats. We've got to go out there and do something about it. John also says in his letter, he says this, John, he says, "Whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they've seen cannot love God, whom they've not seen. And he who has given us this command, anyone who loves God must also love their brother and sister." This isn't an option if you consider yourself a follower of Jesus. If you call yourself a Christian, you don't get to decide whether or not you're going to show love. John is saying, no, that's not how this works. It's not enough just to sing the songs. It's not enough to drop something in the offering. It's not enough to show up here every week. We've got to love in action out there. We've got to do something about this love. And the thing is, what we like to do, what I like to do, I'll put myself there, is I like to love people that are lovable. I like to love my family, most of them, most of the time. I like to love people who are really nice and say nice things about me. But then there's other people that I don't really like to love because they're not real nice to me. And I want to respond with unlove. See, the Bible, the authors that wrote these things talked about that. Jesus talked about this. He talked about actually going farther than loving our friends. He says anyone can do that. And he talks about loving our neighbors, but then he goes even farther and he talks about loving your enemies. And this is funny because, today we don't use that language, right? Like if I asked you who is your enemy, you'd be like, I don't know, the person that lives below me that keeps like hitting the broom on the scene, saying I'm too loud. Like, I don't know. Like in our day and age, like it reminds me, any of you guys used to watch Seinfeld? And Jerry, the main character, Newman would walk in and it'd be like, hello, Jerry. And hello, Newman. Like that kind of enemy. Like you don't have a Newman in your life, right? Like not many of you have a Newman. So it's easy to go, wow, who's my enemy? And in fact, I love the way that Eugene Peterson put this passage as Jesus is challenging people to love their enemies. Eugene Peterson put it this way. Jesus speaking, to you who are ready for the truth, I say this, love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. When someone gives you a hard time, respond with the energies of prayer for that person. That's challenging, isn't it? Respond with the energies of prayer. When you're praying, what kind of energy are you bringing to that? And Jesus says, don't let them bring out the worst in you. Allow them to bring out the best in you. There's this great book by this author by the name of Bob Goff. If you don't know who Bob Goff is, if you've never heard of him or watched anything about him, you're missing out in life. Like, he is amazing. He's written 2 different books, one recently called Everyone Always, another previous book called Love Does. And I was reading something from Love Does this week, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is how we respond to people in our culture, in our world called enemies. And I thought, you know what, no one can say it better than him. So I want to read a passage to you from Love Does as he talks about this idea. Bob Goff says, what I've learned following Jesus is that we love best by engaging the people we've been avoiding. I think Jesus meant something different when he said enemies. He meant we should love the people we don't understand, the ones we disagree with, the ones who are flat out wrong about more than a couple things. I have plenty of those people in my life, and my bet is you do too. There are plenty of people I don't understand. I suppose some are trolls and some aren't. God doesn't see people the way I do, though. The ones I see as problems, God sees as sons and daughters made in his image. The ones I see as difficult, he sees as delightfully different. The fact is, what skews my view of people who are sometimes hard to be around is that God is working on different things in their lives than God is working on in mine. He goes on to say this, because what we tend to do is we create barriers to people like that. We like to separate people and put them in categories. And he responds and says, barriers make me feel right. And that makes me feel safe. I think this is something we all do to one degree or another, so there's no shame in that. Except that's not what Jesus did. He showed us what it means to become love when he spent his last meal with a man he knew would betray him and willingly die a criminal's death. We make loving people a lot more complicated than Jesus ever did. Every time I try to protect myself by telling somebody about one of my opinions, God whispers to me and asks about my heart. Why are you so afraid? Who are you trying to impress? Am I really so insecure that I surround myself with only the people who agree with me? When people are flat wrong, why do I point myself, the sheriff, to straighten them out? burning down others' opinions doesn't make us right. It makes us arsonists. You see, I start with this because I want to be clear about what we're doing today and with this series and as a church. I want to be clear about who we're going to love and how we're going to love them. You see, here at Eikon, we're not going to create categories. And this is how we're going to love these people that think this way. And here's how we're going to love these people in this way. Because many of us, we've experienced this, right? You've talked to a Christian before, and they say, listen, I'm just going to speak the truth in love. Which, if you don't know this, many times, that's Christian language for, I'm going to be a jerk. Right? Like that, we need to speak the truth in love. That's what we need to do. No, you need to love people the way Jesus would. And how would Jesus respond in that moment? You respond in that way. So as we go out from here, as we live our lives, we're going to be asking ourselves, what's the way of Jesus? How would Jesus love in this moment? So when you see someone on Facebook and they set you off and you're hashtag triggered, before you start typing, I want you to think, are these the words that Jesus would use? Is this how Jesus would show love to someone who disagrees with them? And maybe you'll hit backspace a few times and decide not to reply or not to post. And as a side note, has anyone ever changed your mind in your life on Facebook about something significant? It doesn't work that way. It works in relationship when we get up close to people we don't understand, with people that we don't agree with. We say, help me understand. I don't understand the perspective you have. Could you explain that to me? Why do you think that way? See, that's how we create change. That's how we show love to people. So we've got to understand what the way of Jesus is. And at the end of the day, if it's not the way of love, it's not the Jesus way. And it's not Christianity. If it's not the way of love, it's not the Jesus way. And the Jesus way should be the Christian way. That's how we live. We live in love. And I get it. What we many times do is we see these inspiring things, or we hear these stories. We watch a video that goes viral of a community or group of people that came together and build someone a house. And we think, oh, that's love. And it is. But many times that leads us to go, man, I want to build someone a house someday. But not today, right? Because who can build someone a house? You hear about someone giving a car away and you're like, oh, I want to do that. But you got to have your own car that works first, right? And many times we limit ourselves. We think like, oh, I can't do this because I don't have that. Let me challenge you. We're not held back by what we don't have. We're actually held back by what we don't use. You see, you've got something. You've got a way that you can express love, even if it's a conversation, even if it's your presence. So you're held back when you choose not to leverage that and use that. Not by what you don't have. Oh, if I had this, ooh, man, if I win that lotto on Tuesday, woo! We think about all the things we could do. That's great. What are you doing now? Because you've got something, you're limited by what you choose not to use. And you see, sometimes we think like, I need something to happen. I just need to get zapped by someone so I can love people. At the end of the day, love isn't something we fall into. Love is someone we become by the brutal choice of our will. We choose to love. It's not a feeling, it's not an emotion, it's not something that happens here. We choose to walk out those doors and to show love to our neighbors. We choose to walk out those doors and show love to our coworkers and our classmates. It's someone you become. At the end of the day, here's the thing, I nerd out about like the Bible and theology, and I love those things. As a pastor, I love communication. I love to talk about faith and Christianity and religion, and I nerd out. I love those things. Do you know what? I don't care if I'm known for those things. The last thing I want, actually, is on my deathbed at my funeral for someone to come up and go, man, he loved theology. It sounds boring. Man, he knew a lot of verses. Like, I don't care about those things. You know what? In fact, I'm probably wrong about some of those things. In fact, if God really is God, he's way bigger than all of us, more than we could ever understand. I'm probably right about only 50% about my theology. The weird thing is, I don't know which 50%. We're all just figuring this thing out. But what I want to be known for is, man, that person loved people. He loved people well. And as lead pastor of this church, my goal is to try to lead the way in this. So if there are ever moments in life that you see me and you're like, man, Dan's kind of out on a limb there. Well, what's he doing? I hope it's for the sake of love. I hope it's like a kind of olive branch kind of limb that I'm out on. That I'm doing everything I can to show love to the people that Jesus would show love to. That's what we care about here. That's what we want to be known for here. So for the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about how we are going to do this. Next week, we're going to be talking about how we love our neighbors, what it looks like in our own communities. When Jesus tells us to love our neighbors, sometimes we like to get all theological and who is our neighbor? And what does that mean? What if it's your neighbor? You could start with them. We're going to talk about what does that look like? How can you practically do that? Because remember, love isn't an emotion, it's an action. It's something you do. And then the following week, we're going to talk about how we can love our world. What does it look like to love our world? We're going to get a bigger perspective. What does it mean to be a global citizen? To live in the wealthiest nation on the planet and to steward that responsibility. What does that look like? We're going to be doing different things for that, but it'll be a day that we can look at that and say, what do we do with what's in our hands for those that have less in theirs? And then on the last Sunday, we're going to serve and we're going to celebrate. It's going to be an incredible day where we look at all that we've done over the past few weeks and celebrate that moment. It's going to be incredible. So what we're doing each week is we're finding ways how we can do that. Next week, how can we love our neighbors? How can we love our community? So we're bringing in We Are Blood. It's a local nonprofit that does blood drives to help supply the Austin area blood bank. This time of year, they get low on their blood stores, and we want to come and we want to donate blood next week. So if you come back next week, please come back next week and be ready to donate blood. If you're able to do that, we would love to have you do that. As a father whose youngest daughter has been the recipient of multiple life-saving blood transfusions, can I tell you, this is how you show love to our community. This is a great way how we can serve. You don't have to do anything extra. You just show up here. Like you just come and stay a few minutes after. We'll have a mobile blood bank set up out there. You can come earlier, stay late after service, and we can just say, as a church, we want to love our neighbors and love our community. And here's one way we can do it. We'll talk about more ways that we can do it, but that's one thing that we're doing next Sunday, so come back for that. Then the following week, as we talk about how we're going to love our world, we're bringing in the Compassion Experience. Compassion International is an international organization that looks at global areas and impoverished areas and see how we, in our place, can serve developing nations. We'll have semi-trucks come in that we can walk through and experience what it's like to live in a developing country, hear the stories of children and families that are living in poverty. We can ask ourselves, what can we do about that? Because there's something we can do. Have an opportunity to sponsor some kids. I'll get to share about my experience. And a few months ago, I traveled to Ecuador and saw some of the Compassion International sites. And what I saw was nothing short of amazing and breathtaking, the work that they're doing there. I have an opportunity to share a little bit about that, and we'll get a chance to talk about how we can love our world in that way. And then on the final week, as we serve and celebrate, we're doing a church-wide serve day. Guys, this is going to be huge. On Saturday, November 10th, I want you to put this in your calendars. We want all of Eikon Church to show up to say we are going to serve and love our community, no strings attached. We're working with the local park district, with a women's shelter, a children's shelter, local area schools, the food bank. We want to create as many serving opportunities as possible. There'll be opportunities for your children to serve, for you to serve with your coworkers, neighbors. Invite people to join you, because what we're doing is we're just showing this community we love them. And this is what we do as a church, is we show that we love them. So we've got serving opportunities across the community. Come here to Eikon Church at 8:30. We'll meet and then we'll break out across the community and show our community that we love them. You can go to iconchurch.com/events for more information. There's incredible opportunities. And go to that page as well. We still need serving opportunities for the compassion experience. So also iconchurch.com/compassion. There's still opportunities. We need people to serve on Sundays at the compassion booths where we'll have different children that you can sponsor. We need people to run those tables. So we still need volunteers. Please contact us if you're able to serve. This is what we're doing, right? We're showing the world, we're showing our community that we love them. At the end of the day, love is never stationary. You don't love sitting there listening to me. You love by standing up and going out and serving. That's how we love. And then after all of this, after we've donated blood and served our community and served Compassion International as they come in, we're going to party on that final Sunday. That final Sunday, we're going to have our Fall Fest. It's going to be amazing that Sunday. We've got food trucks coming in. There'll be inflatables. There'll be a petting zoo. This time we're getting pony rides because who doesn't love pony rides, right? Like it's going to be an incredible day where we celebrate after each service. So come, invite your friends, invite your neighbors, your coworkers. And in this service, we'll talk about all the hours that you served. We'll talk about the stories of the children that you sponsored, whose lives are being changed because of your compassion. We'll celebrate all that we've done. We'll share stories about how Eikon was love in our community, and we'll celebrate that. But that's what we'll be doing all those other weeks. I want to spend the last couple of minutes talking about what we're doing this week. This has been something that I've thought about, again, for years. The team has done so much. They've planned this, thought about this, had ideas. So what we're going to be doing this week is we're going to be going out into our community this week and for future weeks and telling them, Eikon Loves. So here's what we got. We've got these little business cards, and they just say, Eikon Loves. Hopefully you received one on your way in. If not, there's some on the way out. There's some at the info center. And you've got a job to do. I want you to take a handful of these cards, take a small stack of them, and go into your community this week and find ways to show real love to our community. So for you, it might be, maybe you take the card and you write, Eikon Loves free coffee. And you write free coffee on your card and you leave it with the barista and you pay for the person behind you. You say, just let them know that this is for them and I want to pay for their coffee. Maybe at the drive-through line, you're going through and you write free food. You write that and you give this to the person. You say, hey, pay for the person behind me. Or better yet, with your family, go out to a restaurant this week and look for a family, look for a person around there and decide, you know what, we're going to pay for their meal. And you write on their card, maybe you write free food, maybe you write great conversation. Maybe you find a family, it looks like they're having a great time and you just write family time. You call your waiter over and say, I'd like to pay for their meal anonymously. Here's this card, give them this when you give them the receipt. And you just watch them look around and be amazed. I want to flood our community with acts of service this week. I want people to get free coffee and then get free, lunch and then think what kind of church, what kind of cult is this? How many of these people are out there? Where are they and why are they following me? I want to flood our community with love this week. May we be known for that. Maybe for your neighbor, you write great lawns and you mow their lawn. No strings attached. You stick this in the door and say, hey, I don't do this enough. I just want to say I love you. Find ways in your neighborhood, in your community. Maybe for you and your family, you decide to make cookies and you write, Eikon Loves cookies. And you can bring them to the office here, Eikon Church, 400 Old Post Road. I'm in here Mondays. You just bring them in here. I feel loved by cookies, right? You find simple ways with your family. You find simple ways on your own to express love. Maybe there's a family that you know of that hasn't had a date night in a while and you just write date night on them. You say, hey, we want to watch your kids and give you a gift card and you go have a date night on us. Buy some board games and tell them, hey, Eikon Loves family game night. We want to hook you up. You find creative ways to write on this card to show love. Maybe you think about your kids and what their love language is and how they feel loved. I'll tell you this, my son, his love language, this is what I would write on his card. Eikon loves Fortnite. Fortnite is his love language, right? If I buy him some V-Bucks, because that's a thing, right? Parents, you're going in debt too, right? You're right, Eikon loves Fortnite, and you get him some V-Bucks, they will feel loved, trust me. It's oh, Jesus loves me, this I know. For the Bible tells me so, right? There will be a moment with your kids. You find ways to do this. Maybe with a loved one, with a family member, again, maybe with a child. You write, Eikon loves you. You write them a note. go up into their bedroom, you sit down, you say why you love them, why God loves them. You say, hey, we're part of Eikon. So we are Eikon. I just want you to know that Eikon loves. We want to be known for this. We want to go out in our community. We want to flood our community with these cards. I want people to see these everywhere they turn around, amazed at the love of you. See, the reason we've put this off for so long is we wanted it to be at the right time when we had critical mass. You see, because I on my own, I'm not Eikon. Kelly, the staff, the team, we're not Eikon any more than you are. We wanted there to be enough Eikon-ease. Enough of you to go out there and really flood our community. So grab a stack of cards and decide to do something about it. And there's going to be hundreds, maybe thousands of moments of unseen love in our community. And you know what? We're going to share some of these stories, but your story may not get shared. It might just be between you and Jesus and the person you showed love. You know what? Love cares more about who's hurting than who's watching. So let's go out there. Let's go show love to our community. Sometimes we make following God so complicated. And when we dive into these deep, like theological tirades, and what about this, and what about that, and all these things, and I get it, life can be complicated. I can't tell you how many college students I've talked to that have said, what am I supposed to do with my life? Like, I don't know, something. I can't tell you how many times I've thought that. What am I doing with my life? So I get it, it's complicated. So while you figure out life, because it's hard, I get it, it's complicated. While you do that, just go love everybody. Let's just be people that go out and we don't care what people think, what they believe, what category they fall into, whether they're a part of our church or not, whether they care about God or can spell God. And just love them. Because that's what Jesus did for every one of us. He loved us. He said, now go and do likewise. This is who we are. Eikon, we love. That's what we do. May we be good at this. I love our worship team. I love our communicators. I love this environment. But this is what I want to do great. If it comes at the expense of anything else, so be it. May we love well. That's what God in Jesus did for us. Amen? Let's pray.